Hi everyone and welcome to Back in Time Fiction, my little channel dedicated to historical fiction. This is my first video since I moved to Japan. It took me about a month and a half to settle, which also explains why I haven't updated this channel in, nearly 2 months. Sorry about that. In order to move to Japan, I had to do a 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel not too far from Tokyo with my wife and my son. So of course I needed some good books with me, and the one I wanted to start with was Gates of Fire by Pressfield. So today is going to be a quick review of this book. I very often read books set in European Dark Ages or sometimes in Roman times. Whenever I can, I like to read books set in Asia as well, for example. Or other settings, but I've always had troubles reading books in ancient Greece. The thing is, I really like the stories, the legends and the myth around this period, so I wanted to give a try to this book for a very long time. And the thing is, I tried before. This is the second time I tried to read Gates of Fire, and I must say I had troubles getting into it, even knowing how awesome everyone said this book is. Now this book got me really torn in half. This time I managed to finish it, and I absolutely loved it, but at the same time I really disliked some part of it. And this is what I'm gonna tell you today. So for those who don't know, Gates of Fire is a retelling of the Battle of Thermopylae. Actually, it's more of a retelling of the events leading to the Battle of Thermopylae. And the Battle of Thermopylae, for those who maybe don't know the name, that's the Battle of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans against Xerxes and his million-man army from Persia. So basically that's the story from the movie 300. Gates of Fire is actually the story of a man named Xerxes, and Xerxes is like a free man fighting in the Spartan army. So he's not Spartan himself. The thing is, he's not one of the 300, he's more like a servant to one of them. And he's actually one of the very few people who survived the Battle of Thermopylae. Xerxes asks the wounded Xerxes to tell his story, just to gather some knowledge about the real Spartan. Xerxes accepts to give his tale, and he does it from his late childhood, so we know what happens in the last 10 years before the Battle of Thermopylae. Xerxes in himself is not a very interesting character. I finished the book not really caring about him so much. Usually I'm very fond of characters. I need to care about the characters, that's pretty normal. I didn't in the case of Gates of Fire. Now, I approached it at the end from a different point of view. Instead of thinking Xerxes was the main character, I decided to see the Spartan army as the main character, and then it gets more interesting. Because what this book does amazingly well is to describe the Spartan army, and not just the way the army functions, but all the philosophy behind it. Some of my favorite parts, actually, you know what, my favorite parts of the books are the dialogues between Spartan soldiers, between the warriors from Sparta. Sometimes they will discuss philosophy around what is fear. They can sometimes discuss art, and this is something super interesting, more so than the battles. The battles are actually very short and not so important in the book. What takes more importance is usually the moment before the battle and after the battle. And this is very refreshing for a book in the genre. So I got into Gates of Fire expecting some kind of military historical fiction, heavy in the battle scenes, maybe a bit gory or whatever. But I was both disappointed and very happily surprised by the fact that the battles are not omnipresent. But of course this is still a military historical fiction, so you get plenty of action, but this is definitely not the most important. I must say, the writing is amazing. Pressfield did an amazing job, not only as a writer, but as a historical fiction writer, in the sense that even though I'm not a specialist of that period at all, I could see that this is a very accurate retelling of ancient Greece. The vocabulary is very strong, sometimes a little bit tricky to get into, but it didn't bother me either. So I really felt like I was in ancient Greece, and I really felt like I could sense the tension rising as the Persian army prepares itself for battle. You can feel like the whole Greece is kind of spooked about what might happen very soon. So the writing is good, the history is very good, the story itself is very good as well. There's no problem. The only thing I didn't connect with were the characters. Like I said, Xeones, the main character, first I wasn't even sure about his name by the end of the book. So Xeones I didn't care so much about, but even the secondary characters around him I didn't really care. There is one more thing that I didn't really enjoy with Gates of Fire, and that's probably why I didn't connect with the characters, is that Steven Pressfield used a lot of time jumps. I'm not a fan of this at all. It's always a very tricky business when a writer puts time jumps in a story, and I feel like this time there were a lot of them, and they kind of disconnect you from the story, which means it's difficult to keep track of what is happening. It's difficult to care about the characters because you never know who is going to come back when, or you're always left in a fog as far as secondary characters are concerned. So after the first arc, you know, I really got into it. You know, I really enjoyed the secondary characters, the relationship with the main character, and then there is this really abrupt time jump, and then you don't hear about the secondary characters from the first arc for some times. So, you know, after that I decided I didn't really care about any character at all. So far I know it sounds a bit negative, but actually I really enjoyed this book. I read it way faster than intended, and I had to find another one because, you know, 2 weeks quarantine. Let's recap a little bit. It's not a character-driven novel. I didn't actually care so much about any of them, and the only one I really wanted to see was Leonidas, but he doesn't really show up that much. There are a lot of time jumps, which, as I said, I didn't really enjoy. So those are the negative points. Now on the positive, like I said, that was historically very beautiful. We get to hear a point of view from these events that we usually don't have, which is like the philosophical part of the Spartan. So, you know, usually we see them as like brutes, warriors, and that's it. But actually there was a lot more to say about those guys, and Steven Pressfield did an amazing job on this point. So I finished the book not really caring about Xeones, but I did care a lot about Sparta itself, so I started to do more research about it, and I think this is really the job of historical fiction. It's to get you interested in a certain period of time or place or culture, something you didn't research before, and for that this writer deserves all my praises. Okay, I feel like this review was super personal, so please tell me what you thought of this book if you've read it or after you've read it. That's it for me today. I will come back very soon with another video on historical fiction from my new apartment in Tokyo. Super happy to see you guys again. Until my next video, just grab a book and enjoy it. See ya!